Right now. All right. Thank you, everyone. Scott Brandt coming with the Dreamer Cypher, half of Two Native Sons. So it's just myself tonight. I've got Flip Austin Aguilera on with me. And so I know Flip is, we've done the podcast before. We did that collaboration. Patrick had you on for his stories worth telling or worth sharing. And so now we were having a discussion on a post that I had made on Facebook. And I was like, we've got to go live. We got to come on the Dreamer Cypher and just have the conversations because I know you get very in depth with a lot of your different stuff. And I think when we look at what we're trying to do with the impact for small business owners, dreamers, visionaries, just having these conversations and having them on the table so people understand, hey, have these real life conversations. Don't be scared to hold anything back. So what I'll have you do, Flip, is you can share a little bit of who you are, what you do, and that way people, if they don't know who you are, they can get a little insight of who you are.
All right. So, number one, I'm awesome. Number two, I do awesome things. Number three, I try to do all these awesome things, not being led by ego. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay.
But you can go see our collaboration episode if you want to get more on me. But I am a holistic health coach. I help people try to put the puzzle together. And, fitness is a big part of how I have people put that puzzle together. Breathing is a big part of how I put that puzzle together. Learning how to defend yourself physically, emotionally, all these types of ways are things that I've dipped I don't even want to say I've dipped my toe into it. I've dove into it head first.
Yeah, no, that's a unique way when you think about it, because when you think about people that have these ideas, these visions and whatnot, they're like, let me go dip my toe in the pool before I jump head first in. And when you think about that, when you hear somebody's like, oh, let me go dip my toe in the pool before I try it fully, what happens to those individuals that decide to go that route?
It depends, right? So I don't know if we've said this before, but the universe is infinite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And although we live in a place here that is, let's call it moderately conservative, you have a lot of Christian type of influence here. I would call myself of the more spiritual type of way. I think I've told you before, I'm spiritually promiscuous. I think there's a lot to learn from a lot of different places. I don't need to get it from one place. But repeat your question again so I could reconnect it.
So when you think about people that maybe get into the entrepreneurial endeavor, maybe they have an idea or they have a vision. They're like, let me go dip my toe in the pool before I jump head first in. And so if somebody's hesitant that way and they're like, let me try, or let me just dip a little toe in there and see what happens. Like, what truly is taking place for this person? What truly may happen to this person that if they go that route where they're very hesitant or very timid instead of just jumping full bore like you were?
All right, so now it's come back to me. So the universe, right? The universe, the source, God, whatever you want to call it, it's infinite, right? Can we agree on that? It's infinite. It can express itself in an infinite amount of ways. So people who dip their toes in the water, for some people, that might be the way that they get to the point of going head first, right? It's like being a baby. You could put a baby next to water so that it can get comfortable with water. It dips its toe in the water. It's like, oh, the water's not so bad. And that same baby might one day end up being an Olympic diver. So I don't think there's anything wrong per se in dipping your toe in the water if it leads you to a place where you're willing to dive.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. No, and that's one of those things. And then we do have so we have individuals that are popping in. So we've got Patrick Massey tuning in from his Twitch stream. My guy Flip giving that shout out to you. So I don't know how much you guys have interacted or how well you know each other, but I know Patrick's one of those individuals too that has that mindset piece and is just very open hearted and wants to give back and really help people out. So anybody that's looking to follow individuals on Twitch, Patrick's one of those individuals. I know he's got his YouTube and whatnot. Uh, just from the last time he was on the Dreamer Cypher, and this is the first time you've been here. So I think Patrick's thinking about when you were doing your story worth telling with Patrick Murakami. So I think that's the one that he's thinking of and whatnot. Because I was like, I don't recall having flip on the Dreamer Cypher yet. So
whatever the case may be, whatever both of you are doing is getting around and getting, the message out there and connecting people who are of that similar mindset. So we'll take it from wherever we can get it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and that was a great conversation. So I've got a mentor that I follow. His name's Matt Morris, and he actually had posted this on Instagram. So let me see what you get from this. He said, "Beat up a fucking bear." And the fucking, he's one that doesn't cuss a lot. So one of the best compliments I ever received. It came right after a webinar I did for one of my team in Europe. I was pretty fired up on the webinar, and as usual, doing my best to hold nothing back. I laughed out loud when I saw it. Matt, you make me feel like I can beat up a fucking bear. He, of course, being European, didn't have the asterisks like yours truly as the uptight American laugh out loud. Why do I share this story? The lesson is this: let your passion out, bring the heat. From 1 to 10 on the excitement scale, you need to be a 10. So many times we try to impress people with our words. We try to be sophisticated. We want to be professional and cool. But listen, professional, sophisticated, and cool don't move people. Great leaders stir people's blood much more than they appeal to our logic. If you want to move, touch, and inspire, be more concerned with transferring your energy than transferring your knowledge. Read that last sentence again. Here's what I was taught early in my career that served me well. Get on fire, and people will come from miles away to watch you burn. Burn, baby, burn. Now, when you think about that, and one of the big parts in there is that leadership part, and how people will end up being their false self, trying to be the person for everybody and whatnot. And when you hear Matt's comments with that, what comes to mind, and what may be something that when you hear that, maybe you look at it a little bit differently than what Matt's bringing in regards to the energy and really driving the blood, stirring the blood for the other people that you may be talking to.
So I agree with that statement, but just like I'm spiritually promiscuous, I'm also approach promiscuous. And again, the universe is infinite. That may be the approach that some people can take that'll get them where they want to be. But at least for what I do, I like to meet people where they're at. And I also like to allow them to be in kindergarten. I don't. So sure, yes, if yours is ball to the wall, but if you're the person who needs to learn kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but you get along, and that to what we were talking about on Facebook earlier, where I put that Nietzsche quote, if your how or your why is strong enough, be it if you do it on fire, if you do it step by step, if you do it visually, however you do it, if that why is strong enough, I'm the type that I'll help you do it whichever way is going to be helpful for the person that's in front of me. And that makes me think of a story of my wife, and this may come across a little different.
It's all good.
But every once in a while, you want to say the right things to your partner and all that. And I don't want to say I'm OCD because I don't have a problem, but I like things to be where they belong, right? And that I think my wife appreciates that. And sometimes she's like, I really appreciate that that you're organized and you like things where they belong. And I'll look at her and smile, because I know that what I'm going to say next is to just give her a little jab, and I'll look at her and be like, thank you, but I don't need your positive reinforcement. Right? So I'm the type of person that I just do things because I'm willing to just do them. I don't need somebody to constantly be telling me, but some people are. And to echo that even more, my wife and I, we just got a puppy, because part of her vision is when we got this house, we were getting a puppy. So visions accomplished. Now, because we were getting this puppy, both of us head in to watching YouTube videos on how to train puppies. And there's different types of approaches, right? There's like the Caesar Milan approach, which is the dog whisper, which he's a little bit, he has some aggressiveness in his approach, but that's not the approach that speaks to my wife. She likes the positive reinforcement. So we've got this brand new dog, and all we've been doing is doing the positive reinforcement, which is opposite of me saying, I don't need your positive reinforcement. But I will tell you, in the week that we've had this dog, it is responding to it. It is learning in a positive way the things it should do. And when it does things that we don't want it to do, we don't get negative with it. We just ignore it because it wants our attention. So when it does the things we like, we give it a lot of attention. When it does, we just completely, I'm not paying attention to you. And
that actually, so that is unique because there is a saying that what you focus on is where the energy goes and what expands. And so when you think about that piece where you don't acknowledge the bad behavior, the negative behavior, whatever it may be, and you just let it go, and then the dog kind of ignores or goes and does whatever else. That's such a unique approach, but it also gives a great context to whatever you focus on is what's going to expand. That's where the energy goes. And it's so unique when you see that in your daily life taking place.
Yeah, for sure. So this is basically a play on Pavlovian conditioning, right? And we may want to admit this to ourselves or not, but our brains work very similarly, right? And that's why I tell people, allow yourself to be in kindergarten, because when you're in kindergarten, say you and I are sitting in a room right now, a 5-year-old walks in and it's like, hey, this is what I learned in school today. Start singing the ABCs, and sings them incorrectly. Should we be upset at them?
I would say no, because that could potentially destroy the kid. And so that's where you maybe adjust and whatnot, but you don't get mad at the kid for making a mistake because that's where growth and progression takes place. So that's unique how if you get mad at somebody for making a mistake, like what connotation, what that does to somebody.
Well, what does it do to people? Think about it. We live in a world where, as we were growing up, because our parents are human too, they're not perfect. How many parents out there, maybe they had a long day of work, they got frustrated, they get home, the kid frustrates them some more, the kid makes a mistake and they unload on him because they're leaving all that inside and they've got no outlet for it. And that kid might have been, in our example, singing the ABCs incorrectly, where the best thing to do is like, good job on trying, but this is how we do it. Instead of ABD, it's ABC, So, and look at us, both of us are smiling right now because we just did the positive reinforcement. Not only did we correct the mistake, but we got involved with the child in the learning process in a positive way.
Yeah, no, it's true and whatnot. And I think I may have found it. I was looking for kind of what led to this point, and I think I found it, but I'm kind of scrolling through, so trying to find the comment that was made and what we were dealing with. But we do have Jen Arnold, a good friend of ours, that has a comment here. What if she means it as a compliment? And so I think she's going back to your whole example. For example, what if her intentions are good when praising you and she wants to show she appreciates it?
So, Jen, first of all, I miss your face. I haven't seen you in a minute. So let's start with that. But she completely wants to do that. But me just being a person that wants to mess with her and give her a little jab, I look at her with that sly little smile and respond my response. And then she'll look at me and she might punch me in the stomach or something. But it's all in good fun. I do appreciate that she shows me appreciation for the things that I try to do to make our lives, both of our lives, easier. So I do appreciate it, but I like to mess with her because what's the point of having a wife if you can't mess with them?
It's part of a healthy relationship when you look at that. And I know that's a big thing that for myself that I really look at is because I went through the divorce, you went through a divorce. And it's one of those things that if you do the work, you do the inner work. Because I've shared this before, and I shared this on my past episode, and then yesterday when I was doing a live. But if you look at the statistics for divorces, first marriages end in 50% divorce, and the thing that I look at, we've talked about it with the doctor, and I'm going to butcher her last name, Shafili. And
Shafali, yeah.
yeah, and so she talks about the fact that as humans, we grow up and we don't get that validation. And
Yeah.
so you're very stunted in that aspect of being validated, being able to speak and reach out and ask for help and whatnot. And then the statistics were showing that a second marriage ends in a divorce 67% of the time. And then the
Hmm.
third marriage ends in a divorce 74% of the time. And I was like, oh my goodness. But it does correlate with what I speak on is you've got to do the work. So if you go through the divorce, you've got to work on yourself. You got to work internally. If you have a mistake that takes place or you know there needs to be a correction, that comes into a point where it's an internal piece of work that has to be done. But people are so prone on not doing the internal work. And so I think as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as dreamers, the biggest thing that we have to really focus on is the mindset piece, the internal piece, which goes and impacts the rest of whatever takes place. Because you have a lot of people that assume that the external world is what's driving your internal, but it's actually your internal world that pushes out and impacts your external world. And so, you being an entrepreneur and running different businesses and whatnot, um, when you look at the mindset piece, how big is that? And besides the mindset piece, is there anything else that really is a foundational piece that people have to be aware of or be mindful about?
Well, the mindset piece is everything. The mindset piece is everything. Now, while you were speaking, I wrote down how many examples of people out there do we have that are truly, truly, truly doing inner work? How many examples are there in popular culture of that?
That would be your bigger personal development gurus, based on what they teach and what they speak on. But ultimately, if you look at the CEO world, probably 2% of CEOs that do that internal world because they understand the importance.
Hmm.
And I think it goes to the 98 2% rule,
Yeah.
where 2% of people are doing the big work and it's driving everything, and 98% of people are living life, the status quo, being
Hmm.
in the box, doing whatever.
So I have a thought on that too, because that kind of goes to the Pareto principles, right? The 80-20 rule. So I've had this thought, and you tell me what you think about it. What if only 20% of the people are supposed to be mindful and 80% of the people are not supposed to be? Now, they may be 20% in some other thing. It's just not mindfulness and doing the inner work, because that 80-20 rule does seem to be, a very persistent pattern throughout nature.
Hmm.
And what if that's the case? What if only 20% of the people are supposed to be mind? That's what their 20% is. Where, maybe some other 20% they are more mechanical, some other 20% they're more whatever.
Hmm.
So I've had this thought in my life, and when I had this thought, I thought maybe I should stop trying to make everybody be in the 20% that they're not supposed to be in, and allow them to be the 20% that they are, and give that value there.
And that right there, that is one of those things. It's a very unique perspective, and it does line up a lot with what you look at and what you think about. So yeah, oh man, that's something that is one of those that's kind of, hey, here's expanding your brain. Welcome to not going back to where it came from. So,
Mhm.
and then we have Jen having a couple more comments here. She says, "I miss you, ha ha. She deserves the world, huh?" Putting up with you. So she's good over giving you little jabs as we go.
See, but
And then
jobs are
we
fun.
have, and then Jen, this goes to your question about who do you know that's really practicing the awareness. Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I haven't seen a lot of those
Right.
episodes, and she said that's all she's got. So we got Jen coming in here with what she's got going on. So, but yeah, no, it's And that's the thing, because on one of the conversation threads we were having, and it's very unique. I look because the one that we really got into the conversation, and there was a good friend of Patrick, Martin, that actually said, "Man, I really want to see this Dreamer Cypher." So I was like, "Hey, just let you know at 5:30 tonight." She's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna miss it." I was like, "Well, you got the replay, not."
Mm-hmm.
And so the question here was, if you had to dedicate the rest of your life to a cause, what would that be? And then I know, do you recall what you had answered with that one?
I said mindfulness or presence or something like that.
Mindfulness, and because I had to go back because
Yeah.
yeah, teaching mindfulness and presence.
Yeah.
And
Which I
so,
think are one, and they're synonymous, because to be mindful is to be present, right? If you're being mindful, you're being in the moment. And if you're being in the moment, that's the present. And the reason that the present is so amazing is that that's the moment where you can truly affect change. You know, you can't do it in thinking about the past. You can't do it in thinking about the future. You can only do it in the moment. Now, bringing back our kindergarten thing. If there's something you're trying to change about yourself, say you want to stop smoking. You know, you've developed the habit of smoking, and I'm one of these people that thinks everything is a skill. Good things, bad things, everything is a skill that can be developed, because the brain is a pattern machine, and the more you develop that pattern, the better you're going to get at it, negative or positive. So say you want to stop smoking. Now, there is an addictive component to smoking and the nicotine, but at the same time, nicotine also does have some very good cognitive effects if you use it by itself. When you take it in the smoking way, number one, you're taking in a load of carbon, which whatever, but you're also taking in all those chemicals. But that's me going on a sidetrack now. Say you want to stop smoking. You get that urge to smoke. At that moment, if you are being present, you can look at that urge, you can talk to that urge, and you can say, you know, I don't really want you to be there anymore, and I'm going to go chew a piece of gum instead. I'm going to develop a new habit, a new skill, that if I continue to do it in the present, every time it comes up, that's going to become the new habit and the new skill, until eventually you're chewing 10 boxes of gum a day instead of smoking
and
cigarettes.
then maybe you're in another boat where you got to adjust and whatnot. But
Mhm.
I think it's when you look at that, it's the neuroplasticity. So now you're going to the pathways of the brain, and it's one of those things that people have to understand, that you can adjust the pathways in your brain. The only thing that it comes down to is with the negative habits, the bad habits. When they're looking, it's about 12 weeks. So 6 weeks to break down that negative habit and start transitioning to the positive, and then 6 weeks to really get that positive habit stuck in place. But it's one of those things that there's a couple exercises out there, but it's one is, okay, if I don't change this habit, and maybe I don't feel it, but maybe you have loved ones that want to see you change that habit. What would that mean to you to change that habit for your loved ones? And so now you're getting outside of yourself. But ultimately, it comes down that you got to look at you as the individual, and what is that going to mean to you by changing the habit? What is that going to do for you to do something different, to change that pathway that a lot of people assume, well, I can't change it. This is how it's set up. And it's like, no, you can go in there, because you listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza and some of the stuff he talks about. I think he had talked about it, or somebody else was talking about, DNA is very malleable. So it comes now into the power of your mind, and
Mhm.
you can go and shift your DNA, which is now starting to get out of this box. That you're like, no, this is no, I can't do that. So it's that work and whatnot. But when you done any research or looked in regards to the neuroplasticity and neural pathways within the memory and the thought process with the brain?
Well, there's the book by Carol Dweck, right? The fixed versus growth mindset, and she goes into a lot of the science behind the fixed and the growth mindset. But yeah, I'm going to say it over and over again. I truly believe everything is a skill. Even Say that you want to change your diet habits. That's a skill. Say you want to climb Pikes Peak. You have to build that skill.
Hmm.
Everything, the way you think is a skill. So if it's not serving you, what are you going to do about it? That's my favorite question to always ask people. When they're upset at something about the way their life is going, I like to say, man, that's really crazy, all that story you're telling me. But I just want to know, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. And
And
so, got a couple of things here. So, want to first recognize the sponsor for being able to do this, which is Tabala Cuisine with Jasper Axelrad.
Jasper.
I know, yeah. Like, she speaks highly of you. She loves you. But Jasper is also one of those people too that you get her around the right people, and just her passion and drive with what she's doing, it's huge. And so a lot of what myself and Patrick with Two Native Sons are doing, Jasper's kind of been the catalyst for that, which is unique. And I told her, I was like, as a sponsor, you're doing so much for us that normally you don't see from a sponsor that sponsors a endeavor or a practice and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
and then Jen made a comment here, so we'll give a shout out to her work environment, her work center. She said, Scott, we do Joe Dispenza meditations at Balance.
Mhm.
So anybody in Colorado Springs that's looking for a chiropractic office, Jen Arnold with Balance Chiropractic is a route for you, because I know a lot of people are always looking for chiropractors. But with what you do, you look at the breathing aspect. And I think because you've talked about that, that's the foundational piece for everything. And so, as entrepreneurs, dreamers, visionaries, breathing's got to be something you got to focus on. And so, when you look at your practice and what you tell people, why is breathing a foundational aspect to have your body in alignment to really have it functioning as best as possible?
Well, first off, if you don't breathe, what happens?
You're gonna die or pass out.
All right. So when I explain to people about breath, because the very first assessment I give any client that wants to work with me is the breathing assessment. And the way that I like to have people visualize it is, imagine the earth. We have the earth, right? You want to build a house on this earth. How many times in your life have you heard you need to build things on a good foundation, right?
All the time.
All the time. So I'm going to go a little bit step deeper than that. The breath is the earth that you want to build the foundation on.
Hmm.
So you can have the best foundation in the world, right? If you build that best foundation in the world and you put it on a piece of land that is prone to mudsliding, which we have here in Colorado,
Hmm.
what's going to happen is your whole house is going to surf down on a good foundation. But the piece of earth that you built it on was not good enough.
Hmm.
So the breath is the earth that you put your foundation on. Now, next part is just like we're saying, everything is a skill to be built. Breathing is obviously something we evolved a long time ago because we wouldn't be alive unless we evolved that. So it's a very deep part of who we are as living beings. So when it comes down to now, let's say the science of it all, there's two types of breathing, really. Like, and then you can break them up into little sub breathings, but there's two types of breathing. There's sympathetic breathing and there's parasympathetic breathing. So sympathetic breathing is your fight, flight, or freeze.
Hmm.
Parasympathetic breathing is your rest, recover, digest.
Oh, okay.
When I do the assessment, I've realized that there's a large percentage of people who are subconsciously breathing in the fight, flight, or freeze breathing. So because we've been breathing for such a long time, say that you and I are hunters and gatherers because we've only had about this amount of time to adapt to the industrial revolution, right? We've had
Yeah.
this amount of time to adapt, let's see this way, to the agricultural revolution. And now you're not going to see my arms anymore, but we had this amount of time to adapt to being hunters and gatherers. So we've had the most time adapting under that set of circumstances. And we are starting to change, but evolution, some of it is fast, but a lot of it is slow.
Oh, okay.
So if you and I were we were in the same tribe, right? We're doing our thing in our tribe. Another tribe wants to come to our tribe and take our resources. Are we going to be breathing calmly, or are we going to be breathing fight, flight, or freeze? Which type of breathing?
During that time, well, actually, most of the part is going to be the second part of the flight, fight, or freeze aspect.
Yes. So if you are breathing that way subconsciously all the time, what you are doing, what you are effectively sending to your brain is, I need to be in a fight, flight, or freeze state all the time, which that state releases a certain amount or a certain type of hormones,
Yeah.
which are glucocorticoids and cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine. All those guys are getting released if you're doing that type of breathing, even if it's subconscious, because that's the type, that breathing just releases that waterfall. The other type of breathing, the belly breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing, that releases a different type of hormones that has to do again with rest, recovering, and digesting. How many people do you hear these days, aside from we just have horrible nutritional options here in America? How many people are having gut problems?
Probably 80-85% of the population.
Okay, if you are breathing in the fight, flight, or freeze breath, one of the first things that's getting shut down is digestion. Because when you're fighting for your life, you don't need to use energy digesting. You need to use energy fighting for your life. That's number one. Number two has to do with sleep. And again, all of this has to do with how you're breathing, right? Number two has to do with sleep. And I tell people all the time, sleep is the lowest hanging fruit that you can pick to optimize your wealth or your health, right? Because when's the last time you felt bad after a good night of sleep?
Unless you wake up in the morning with these negative thoughts that you're starting right away. But like, if you had a good night's sleep and then you woke up bad,
you're like, oh, that was great, right? You never really wake up feeling bad.
Yeah.
Now, when you're doing that fight, flight, or freeze breathing, more into that releases cortisol, right? That we were talking about. Cortisol, this one of the stress hormones. Now, cortisol is also what your body releases after you've had that good night of sleep. So say you slept the hypothetical 8 hours that you're supposed to sleep, it was amazing, and you wake up without an alarm clock. One of the reasons you wake up is because your body just drops a little bit of cortisol. You open your eyes, and the way I like to analogize that is that's your body trying to say, okay, you've rested enough, and now you're ready to take on the stress of the day.
And oh man, and when you think about that, that sleep aspect and what that does in the breathing aspect, being a small business owner, being an entrepreneur, being a dreamer, a visionary, you can function at a higher level, at a more optimal level, like you were talking about when we had talked about perfection. And let's get rid of that term and let's get at a optimal aspect, whatever it may be. And so that's powerful. Now we do have a couple individuals here that have made comments. So Daniel McCarthy has stated, "Love Dr. Joe Dispenza."
Hi, Daniel.
Yep. Jen said, "Appreciate both of you." So no problem, Jen. Just part of what we do. So, and then we had Garrett Goggins that commented, "No breath, no life."
And I was on his show too, so don't forget to throw him a little shout out for being on his show as well.
Yep, and actually, so I don't know if you saw the video that he did today, but he actually got connected with an individual that's in Costa Rica. And the individual that connected Garrett and this individual was Jasper. Okay. So here's another thing for Jasper. But that interview was great. And so I did share it, and I also brought up the fact that if individuals are looking for a mindset coach and they need that help with adjusting their mindset piece, Garrett's a great avenue. Garrett is one of those that's very big on making the adjustment, helping people do what they need to and go from those negative thought patterns and stepping in and giving them that accountability, that coach, the partnership to really adjust. And I know he's got his podcast. So if Garrett wants to put his podcast in here, I'm blanking on the name. I apologize, Garrett.
Swimming upstream without a paddle.
Yeah, yep. But if you want to share it so people know, we did breathing exercises on that episode. I gotta go check that one out. So, and then Danielle said, "No breath, no life." But knowing how to breathe is going to allow you to know how to live and whatnot. So, but yeah, no, it's unique in regards with that. How that little thing right there with the switch can be a very big driving force to make humongous changes to be more optimal. Be able, I think, also when you think about that, the creative piece, and a lot of people are missing out on the creative piece, and we're all creative creatures in one way or the other. But you got to tap into it. That's where really where you're going to find life. And so for yourself as an individual, when you think about the creativity process, what would be your niche, or what really is the driving force for your creativity?
The driving force, I guess, for my creativity is the people that I meet. And when I hear the obstacles that they're trying to overcome, is okay, what system can be developed for that individual right there to help them realize that they can be what they want to be. And that takes creativity, right? Because it's not the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of is, but at the same time, it isn't. All right. So, and the reason I say it kind of is, and this is going to tie back to the sleep and breathing, but like Garrett says, he focuses more on mindset. And not that I don't focus on mindset, but I focus a lot on exercise. So why is it that I focus on exercise a lot? Do you think? Just
Well, because exercise is going to allow you to help get your body to an optimal state. Because ultimately, your biggest asset that you own is your body, is your health. So if your body's out of whack, it's not at optimal levels, you can't do a thorough job or whatever it's going to be. So it's the basic foundation for just helping people optimize or get to an optimal state, whatever it may be.
So we live in Colorado Springs, beautiful place. We have Pikes Peak as our pinnacle here. How tall is Pikes Peak?
Over 14
something, right?
Yep.
If you think about this for a second, Mount Everest is 2 of Pikes Peak. So how crazy is that? So put another Pikes Peak on top and you have Mount Everest. And the reason I'm bringing these things up is because the amount of evidence that tells you if you want to be emotionally stable, mentally stable, physically stable, what you need to do is exercise. I'm so sick and tired of reading research that says exercise is good for you, because I feel like I've already learned that lesson and I don't need to learn it anymore. So when I think of people going to therapy, when I think of people going to all these other things, I ask myself, are they doing the most fundamental thing, which is, instead of using the word exercise, let's use purposeful movement. Are you moving with purpose throughout your day? Because if you're not, you can go sit at the therapist and they can be helpful. But the greatest and cheapest medicine that you can get is go move with purpose.
Yep.
Because the research is higher than Mount Everest. It probably reaches to the moon. So
but the problem that we have, and what really drives seeing the basic foundation, you're like, I already know this is common sense for most people, but think about when you hear people are like, somebody has to hear something over about 7 to 10 times before it gets sunk in.
Well, that should be sunk in, because that's something we've been saying since you're in elementary school. Like, you have PE for a reason. So
even though a lot of times they're trying to get rid of that, which I'm like, oh man, we can't do that. That's a basic foundation there. And then we have Garrett that shared his link for his podcast. And then, oh my goodness, we had Daniel McCarthy in here that's schooling us on the correct footage for Pikes Peak. So 14,110 feet.
We appreciate the actual number.
Yep. And then we have Greg Sheldon coming in here. Garrett, what's your a 4G? So we got 3G with Greg Sheldon, and then he's looking at Garrett with 4G. So I guess Garrett, you got a new nickname. You're either Dr. G or 4G. So
Dr. 4G.
Oh, we can go that route too. Oh man. So hey, maybe we got something for you, Garrett. So but what really started here, and I'm looking back here, so you had talked about teaching mindfulness and being present, and I was like, that's huge and needed. Which do you think needs to occur first, mindfulness or being present? And then you said, I believe they're one and the same. And then I believe mindfulness would need to occur. So this is me. So I believe mindfulness would need to occur first, but also they build upon each other. So that's kind of my viewpoint there. But I think also if I look at it too, if you're not present, how can you be mindful? So that's where I can see where you're like, no, they go hand in hand. So it's one of those things after you look and you're like, no, maybe I'm looking at it differently or in a wrong projection here. And then you're like, we should have a reunion discussion on these ideas.
And here we are.
Yeah, so that's where we're at and whatnot. And so it's one of these things that really why I do this stuff is with the single question post that I have is if you're on Facebook, you've got to really mess with the algorithm. And so one of those things is that one question engagement post to get people giving the answers. And then I was told by a business coach, he's like, what you want to do is when somebody gives an answer, you go in there and ask another question to keep building that engagement. And so what happens is the algorithm shows that, hey, this person's very active. And then like your post and everything starts getting thrown around and gets highlighted more. So that, yeah, it's unique, but that's where these conversations have really got started because of different things that I ask and whatnot.
Yeah, keep asking.
Yeah, no, and that I think that one there actually has gotten the most engagement. It's had like 150 comments, and I was like, "This is freaking nuts!" But it's a powerful perspective too because you can start seeing the mind and how people think and how they see the world. Because one thing that I bring up is we all have our lenses that we're looking at the world through, and so it's the fact that when you come across somebody that you don't agree with or you don't match with, it's you got to understand the lens that they're looking at life through. So take the time, step, and kind of see their perspective. See if there's something that you're missing. But ultimately, if there's nothing that's missing or it doesn't suffice for who you are, don't try to adjust. Because we've also had Robert Kittredge that had chimed in on a couple different things. And it was talking about, does life require purpose and a goal? And it's funny because when it's that word require, a lot of us get the assumption that it's needed. But then I had looked at, it was a Cambridge dictionary, and it was the definition of it's something that you desire, and I can't remember exactly, but it's one of those powerful things about how words can be very impactful. And just the drive that may take place and occur. And so, yeah, it's one of the, I'm like, and then Robert's like, I'm not changing my position. I'm not changing how I'm seeing this. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm not trying to convince you to adjust. I'm just trying to bring something to light here. Because the saying that I've heard is a man convinced against his will is still of the same opinion still.
Yeah.
And so it's like instead of arguing to try to force somebody to change their opinion, let's have a discussion. And I think if we have a more civilized discussion, it's not an argument, and you're not trying to bash the other person, your potential to have them see something differently or swing is going to be a lot more than these full-fledged arguments that people have, and they don't step off and all that.
Once ego gets involved, there's no changing anybody's mind.
Yeah. And so it's powerful. It's one of those things, but ultimately, it's
So
we
then
got
what was your side of that position? Is it a requirement? Because that is a very strong
yeah,
word. And I don't know if, again, the universe is infinite
yeah,
and can express itself in an infinite amount of ways. So I don't know if it's a requirement, but it's a nice to have.
yeah. And so I honestly I think everybody has a purpose. And so if you don't know what your purpose is, one thing I've heard is ask people around you. But you got to be very careful though too, because you could have dream stillers, you could have dream crushers, and then they'll be like, "Why are you asking me this question?" And then you're like, "Oh, I'm sad." um, but it's that's the thing. We all have a purpose here on Earth. Whatever it is, you've got to figure that out. But you also don't want to struggle because if you're over here and you're like, "What's my purpose?" and you're holding on tight, like it goes
Well,
into the
well,
psychology, it shuts stuff down.
what you just said. If you're going into it with what's my purpose, how's that going to make you breathe?
The flight, or freeze aspect.
And we didn't finish that whole thing, so now let's bring it around full circle. Say that person who says it like this, they're gonna release those hormones. What is the hormone that makes you wake up if you slept good?
Cortisol.
Cortisol. When that person has that response, what are they going to release?
Cortisol.
So let's say they're having that response several times throughout the day. What is their cortisol level going to be like when it's time to go to sleep?
Through the roof.
And what do you think their sleep is going to be like if the thing that tells them that they should wake up is high?
Garbage.
And once you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start knocking down the days of garbage sleep, what's your life going to be like?
Not what you want.
There you go. So if you want to fix things, exercise, because exercise makes you tired. When you're tired, what do you want to do?
Go to sleep.
Yeah. And then when you wake up, be happy that you get the chance to take a deep breath. So those are the first principles of how to start, just working on being your optimal self.
And then we got Danielle McCarthy coming in with some more knowledge here. So she's always got it. So thank you, Danielle, for bringing this up. Origin of require, Middle English, which means to seek or search for.
Well, I want Danielle to come on here and say it in a Middle English accent. To be real authentic.
Oh, yeah. But look, there's another thing right there that it gives a different perspective on the word of require. And so now you're playing with it. And you're like, man, now I don't even know because I thought required it has to be there. And then Danielle had said that based on what she's bringing up here, it's to seek or search for. Danielle told you no.
Well, the thing about language is that just like us, it adapts and evolves. It doesn't stay the same. Some words meant something 200 years ago and mean something completely different now. Yeah. So I think that that's interesting that even words seem to have an evolution and an adaptation, and it's kind of like biology, like they're alive.
Yep. And so this is the thing that I was saying about too. I was reading a book. It's called Come As You Are. It's the female sexuality piece and whatnot. So I look at it as like 5 years ago, I would never be reading this type of stuff, but the personal development, growing, getting the different tools and just increasing the knowledge really has driven this. But the author was talking about the fact that the flight, freeze, or fight aspect, those emotions, people don't know how to fully go through the stress cycle. And then they're trying to find different ways to derail it and try to bring it to a normal level. But if you don't let your stress cycles run, and so she had brought up the example of caveman days in the tribe and whatnot. If somebody was out hunting and whatnot and they see a saber-toothed tiger that jumps out, they're going to kick in of either I need to run, I'm going to have to fight, or freeze. Because the interesting about the freeze piece is in nature, a lot of animals will freeze to make the death go as smoothly as possible and as
as
quickly as possible.
as efficiently as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that right there is nuts when you really think about it, but how that can really impact us as humans
Hmm.
because we're still around this. And so she was talking about, okay, the caveman sees the saber-toothed tiger, it's going through those emotions, it takes running off and it gets to the tribe. And then the tribe comes together, works, and kills the saber-toothed tiger. So now that person that was getting chased is in the point of I'm safe. I'm in
Yeah.
a place that I'm safe. And then the last piece is the celebration piece, so releasing it. And so
Hmm.
they celebrate killing the saber-toothed tiger, go and put it on the fire, cook it up, eat it.
Yeah.
And just that releasing piece. But in our society, we're still in the interaction in the mind because the mind is a 2 million year old organism or organ, and it hasn't adjusted enough. And we're still back in caveman time where we're doing all this crazy stuff when there's nothing really out there that's going to kill you.
Well,
So
there
it,
is. It's just not like that now. And if we want to say this, now we live in a time where we should be grateful that we die because like cancer does suck,
mm-hmm,
but 200 years ago, cancer didn't kill too many people because 45 other things killed you before you had the chance to even get cancer. So
yeah,
that now that we're dealing with cancer is something to be grateful for, because now we're living long enough that we can even have the chance to get it. Now, I'm
mm-hmm,
not saying that it's a good thing, or I'm just saying, look how far we've been able to come in such a short time.
yeah,
Where now our biggest issue is that we're living so long that this other disease that never had a chance to kill us before is now having a chance, because we didn't die from TB, which killed. TB is still the third killer in the world, the number three. Not in developed countries, but you go to poor places and people are still being ravaged by TB, and TB spreads like COVID through the air, through breathing. So, that used to kill people left and right. What was it called?
yeah,
Consumption. Boom, it would take you. One out of every four women back in the day died from giving birth. A flu
hmm,
you got back in the day, you were just as good as gone. You cut your finger,
yeah,
you were going to get gangrene, it's going to spread. And, there was so many things that took us out before. So
yeah,
now there's less things. But to your point, and to our whole point that we were saying earlier, that stress response has developed with us from the beginning. And
hmm,
also to your point, now, since we don't have that celebratory piece of getting over the stress, all we do is practice little stress over and
hmm,
over and over, which becomes chronic stress,
yeah.
which just, once you have chronic stress, just count the quality of your life at the end away and give cancer that door and just open it up.
Yeah. Well, and now when I'm thinking about it too, when you're talking about how as humans we're living a lot longer because of the technology advances and all of the different things that are taking place. And so if you think about it, it goes back to the exercise piece that you had talked about. As people age, exercise is very important to have an optimal life and to reduce what may take you out and whatnot. But it goes into the fact that a lot of people are chasing money, and they're forgetting their health. And I've heard people speak, they've talked to millionaires, people that are on their deathbed that had a lot of money. And they were like, man, if I could go back in time, I would give up all my money to focus on my health. Because if your body's healthy, you have that asset that's able to go and do the different things that you need it to do, you're going to be able to make more money, but you can't make more health. You can't make more time. And so it's going back to this foundational piece of optimization. Focus on
Optimization.
yourself. But this
Mhm.
is the thing too. It's like we're so busy, and we were like, well, I'll get to the gym or I'll work on myself later on. And then all of a sudden later on doesn't come, and you're in the hospital, and you're like, what happened here? Well, you had talked about
You
some of
were
it. You
too
didn't do
busy. Right. That's the thing. And that's why I don't like the being busy. I
it.
don't like to fill my time with being busy. I like to fill my time with things that are going to optimize me. And I was up at 5:30 today getting it going. But one of the laws of physics is an object in motion stays in motion. So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be able to move for your whole life, move, because then that becomes your habit. That's what your brain knows. Your brain knows, hey, I need to be able to move because all I do is move. And both of you and I have spoken about jujitsu before. So we
Yep.
can bring the patron saint of Brazilian jiu-jitsu up, Helio Gracie, and you can go to YouTube right now and search Helio Gracie, 90 something years old, still rolling around tapping people out at 90 something years old. Why? Because he never stopped doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of those things too that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, martial arts and whatnot is a beautiful thing. And I think that's another thing that as entrepreneurs, dreamers, visionaries, go take up a martial arts form because it's really powerful with the mindset piece. It's another community for you to build in and have those relationship pieces. But yeah, no, I think a lot of people don't understand the power of martial arts and what it does for us as an individual. But that's the thing, like you'll have some people that are big in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and then they make fun of all the other martial arts. But you like everything's got a purpose.
Yeah.
So you got kickboxing, you got Muay Thai boxing or kickboxing, and then you got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is groundwork and all that, self-defense. Muay Thai boxing is let me break your nose, bust
With
your
my
eye
foot.
open with some kicks while we're at
Yeah.
it. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
But they're all, again, they're all, it's all purposeful movement. It's
Mm-hmm.
all it's all, if you enjoy it, and even if it's not that, if you want to go dancing, learn how to dance, learn how to be ballroom, learn some salsa, learn whatever, but move with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And if while you're moving there is pain involved, that pain is there to tell you something. It is not there for you to try to numb it, to try to tell it to be quiet. It's telling you, okay, if you want to move, there is something here that needs to change so that you can continue moving. Find out what that thing is, change it, build that new
Mm-hmm.
habit, keep moving. And in that, you will learn something more about yourself. You'll be
Yeah.
even more connected with yourself because now, instead of not listening to pain, you listen to it. And as they say, pain is a teacher. If you listen to it and you're like, okay, because how many people, it's like, oh, I have a back pain, I have knee pain, I can't exercise. It's like, no,
Yeah.
the answer is you need to exercise, but you need to exercise the right things because the pain is probably telling you that you have an unbalance. So let's use exercise to get things back in balance. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to move better again.
Yep. Well,
Mhm.
just think about that too. With that pain, if it gets too much, it impacts what you're able to do functioning wise.
Mhm.
And so now it goes into the whole piece of if you got these dreams, if you got this pain that is deteriorating and it's not allowing you to go after your dreams, you're missing an opportunity to bring something into the world that they truly need because of whatever you're doing, the visionary, the everything.
Mhm.
So it's powerful when you look at this and just how we really need to adjust how we view things. We need to adjust our belief system, the paradigms, which is those crazy things about how growing up you get these beliefs and the paradigms stuffed in your head, and a lot of people end up growing up and they don't question it. They just accept it. And
Well,
then,
that's their habit. They
yeah,
don't know they need to question it. It's not a part of their, like you said, it's not a part of their paradigm of what they're trying to do. It's just, oh, this is where I'm at. This is what it is. And they're caught in that fixed mindset.
yeah.
Hmm.
Man, no, this has been a great conversation. Enjoyed having you on. But what I do to end every Dreamer Cypher, Patrick loves this. Garrett's been getting into it. I've got the mobile app now of Pod Decks. So we talked a little bit about that. And so I do have some different ones. Will allow you to kind of choose what you want to do. We've got the hustle, how dare you, philosophy, and it's probably going to be philosophy just because I know you and whatnot. WTF. They've got a fitness and health deck in here, so we might go that route. Hoops, this or that. The future freaks me out. Holiday traditions, musician interview. Would you rather? up, down, left, right, paranormal, relationship deck, and a superhero deck. So
Let's
which one do
go.
you want to
Let
dive
let
in?
let's go with the what were the last three that you mentioned? Just to throw myself
Last
a curveball.
three. Last three is paranormal,
Uh-huh.
then relationship deck, and superheroes.
Let's go with paranormal.
All right. So let me go ahead and pull this up.
Let's go out of my comfort zone.
Would you purchase a home that is confirmed to be haunted?
Sure. I didn't say I would have to live in it, but I would purchase it.
That is true. They don't give that stipulation that you got to live there. It's you got to purchase it.
So, have you ever heard of The Moth? That podcast, The Moth, that it's like a
Yes, yeah.
storytelling podcast. So there was one with the editor of Vogue France, that she was American, and she's been the only American editor of Vogue France, because you know the French they're a different type of people. But I would encourage you to go listen to that podcast and hear about her experience in what she considered to be a haunted place that she lived in.
I'm gonna have to go check that out. And you said that was the Moth.
The Moth. So just type in Google The Moth, Ghosts, French Vogue, or whatever, and see what comes up.
Spotify. We'll go check out Spotify. And honestly, if you think about that, you purchase a home and then you could rent it out. But if you're renting it out, do you tell your tenants that it's been confirmed to be haunted?
Yes, because that could be a selling point. There's some people who will go there just for that. You can probably make it an Airbnb experience.
It's like the one Blockbuster that's been left alone. That's an Airbnb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you see, so it's all on how you market the story.
That is true. That is true. Next one that we have is: do you think aliens perform abductions for research or fun?
Oh, well, see, the thing is, I've heard Joe Rogan's interview with people who actually say they've had encounters with aliens, and I'm going to say that they probably do it for both, because the reason that I conduct any research is because I find it fun into what I'm trying to learn about. So I think both of them are happening simultaneously. It's like, what happens if I stick this probe up this hole? Oh, that was interesting and fun. I didn't know the human was going to scream like that.
Yeah, and then you think about it, because you got some very vindictive people that are like, oh, this is what happened here. What if we move up a little bit? What's that that's going to take place next? Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. Garrett's over here. He said haunted Airbnb would be great.
You see? So, you see, we're already selling. Let's buy this haunted house.
we got to talk to Gabriella Simmons in regards to homes. So maybe she's got a haunted house that we can look at, pulling our money and go buy it and then rent it out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. If you could have a drink with any paranormal investigator, who would you choose and why? I don't know any, so I know they got shows, but
I have heard of some, because there's a podcast I listen to called Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, but they're always trying to prove that paranormal people don't know what they're talking about because they're skeptics, right? So I don't remember any of them off the top of my head, but I do know that some of these people do exist. But I'll have a drink with anybody, so
to learn from and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, what non-horror movie scared you the most?
Non-horror movie?
Yeah.
The thing is, I love horror movies, so
I'm trying to think of
they don't really scare me. I don't know. Let's go with Idiocracy. Remember that movie?
A lot of people talking about that's like playing out now. So
exactly, and that's the scary part.
Yes, no, I can see that. I was going to also say, I think the Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, because I had seen that. I think I was like 15. But now, like where I'm at now, when I look back on it, it is one of those things that, like, if people really wanted to go back in time and then you start changing and altering things, how that can really have a huge impact. Because the unique thing on that is I've got a book that I'm reading. It's called Moonshots. And they were talking about the physics and all that. And how all that gets very crazy. But they've done research and they're seeing waves that actually travel back in time.
Again, the universe is infinite and can express itself in an infinite amount of ways.
Yeah.
none of
All right.
none of which need to make sense to humans.
Yeah. Yep, yep. All right. We got would you rather? Would you rather live as a severe germophobic with horrible OCD or have multiple personalities that were all fun?
Oh, number two for sure. I'd rather definitely have multiple personalities that are all fun. I might
Yeah,
have
you
the
know, like,
perfect.
yeah, show up as a different person every day and whatnot, and be like, "This is what we
Mhm.
do. We have fun." So,
I
like,
might.
if you think about that, though, like, what would be the fun that you would bring with the multiple personalities?
Well, we'd have to go ride roller coasters with one of these personalities all day long, all day long. The other one would need to be some sort of improv comedian, and the other one would need to be able to walk on his hands all day while he's telling jokes.
That's a unique combination there. I think mine would be I would just go and start dancing with people.
Okay.
We'll all create a flash mob and whatnot. So, all right. Would you rather live like the Flintstones or Jetsons?
I think I'd rather live like the Flintstones.
Go back to simple times.
Go back to being able to move purposefully just to survive the day and have that moment where we got our food and we all celebrated, and because we're kind of living in the Jetsons now, and that seems like it's
Mm,
kind of divided us more.
mm. Have you ever seen the movie Wally?
Yes. Hmm.
That right there is
It's,
another thing that's like starting to move, and you're like, oh my goodness! And then
it's
all the
happening.
occupants of the ship that all they could do was be in the chair that moves them around.
Hmm.
Just how fat they were.
If you go
That
to
is.
Disney World, you will see that. Like it's really like, whoa. If you go to Disney World, because so many people from all over the place go there, and you see tons of people that are being wheeled around
Mm.
because they can't move anymore.
That no, that is true. So next one we have is: would you rather intern for Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, come on.
Yeah, no,
You know,
I can see
like
that.
Mark Zuckerberg came up with a good idea, obviously, but Elon Musk is an innovator.
It's true. Very, very true. And did you because I know they had the rocket launch and it came back to Earth and it was trying to do the vertical landing and it exploded. Did you
Mhm.
hear what Elon had said?
Oh, but that was the SpaceX one from yesterday or
Yeah.
something. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what he said yet, but you can definitely enlighten me on that.
He's like, yeah, it sucks it blew up, but we got the data that we needed. So that
Well,
dude, like that, the money that's burnt up with that, the rocket being blown up like that. But Elon, man, like you go look at his story and like when he started creating Tesla and what he's done, he really hasn't taken anything with Tesla. Everything gets thrown back. His salary is like minuscule when it comes to what he's doing with Tesla.
well, he's not in it for the money. He's
Mm-hmm.
he got paid from PayPal a long time ago. He does things because he truly wants to. I think, from my perspective, I don't really know him, so from my perspective, I think he really wants to make this a better place. He believes in humanity, and he thinks if unless it's against the laws of physics, we can do it.
Mm.
So
And then we had Garrett that commented, moving purposefully just to drive your car.
well, we do live in a, like I'm about to go on a 3-day trip tomorrow where I'm going to be in my car a lot. Now, to try to mitigate some of the non-movement, I will do yoga every single day when I get to my destination. But I will also get, like those electric stimulation machines. I have one of those, and I'm going to put it on my glutes, on my abs, just to stimulate my body, because I'm driving to Florida for the holidays to see my family and friends over there. And that's a 3-day car drive. And I know my hips are not going to be happy with that thing at all.
I remember I took a cross country drive to Virginia because I got
Mhm.
stationed out there with the military. And me and my ex wife actually drove straight through. I was like, oh man, that was where. And then when we came back, we actually took time and stopped and whatnot. But that driving straight through,
That's
oh man, that's horrendous.
well, at least now we have podcasts, audiobooks, but we will stop. We have some friends in Kansas City, so we're gonna stop there. We got another friend in Georgia, we're gonna stop there, and then we'll make it all the way down. So it is good that we're gonna see some friendly faces on each day.
Yep. No, that's a good connection piece. It's
Mhm.
rebuilding the connections and whatnot. So, all right, last one that we have here. This is coming from the philosophy deck. Are we a minuscule part of intelligent life in the universe?
For sure. And to add something that I don't think many people think about, there's no guarantee that intelligence is around to stay. It might be here just for a blip and then shoop, that'll go away because the universe is infinite and can express
Yeah.
itself in an infinite amount of ways.
And oh man, when you think about that, like if intelligence was lost, like whew, that would be.
What do you mean if intelligence was lost? It's probably been lost and found who knows how many times throughout infinity.
Well, it's there's a saying out there that tough men or tough times make strong men, and then as you go through and you see it all the time, and then you get to good times make weak men, and so it's unique, that revolution and cycle period that you're always seeing. So I think it kind of goes in regards with the whole intelligence piece of who knows, maybe we've lost it and then somebody came across it, gathered it, and
Mhm.
then
And then
did what they did.
what is intelligence really, right? If you really think about it, because I think humans thinking that they are intelligent, I think comes from a place of ego.
Mm,
Because think about a cat, a cat can see things that we cannot,
mm.
right? It can see infrared. So with its eyesight, it has more intelligence than we do. A
Okay, yeah.
dog can smell and hear way better than we can. In those aspects, it has more intelligence than we do. So, what is intelligence to begin with? And
Yeah.
where do we get off thinking that we have the patent on it?
We're human, so we think we know everything and whatnot.
We
We're
well,
superior and whatnot.
we
But
don't know anything.
that's the other thing, because you have kids, I have kids, and it's one of those unique things too about how when adults are interacting with kids or parents have their own kids, that interaction piece, like a lot of times we look at kids as not being intelligent, or they're lacking. And so that interaction piece with kids is a very unique piece because kids are very, very smart. And it's a sad thing to see a lot of times that kids have the creativity piece. They're the dreamers. They want to go after big things, but as adults, we're like, no, you can't do that. That's too crazy. Let's give that up. If you're creative, you're not going to make any money by being creative, by being a musician and an artist and all that craziness. And so that goes into this aspect too of who tells you that kids aren't intelligent.
Well, if you think about some of the people we read the most about, Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, Steve Jobs, all these people, if you read all of their biographies, autobiographies, one of the things that, at least to me, stands out is none of those people lost their childlike curiosity.
Hmm.
And
It's
that's
true.
what made them be the innovators that they were or are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. Man, this conversation has been great. I think there's been a lot of nuggets, and ultimately, just by doing this, it's a way to give the value. And so, anybody that's watching this or watching the replay, there's the share button that you can hit to share it to people. It's very easy. Facebook gives you that opportunity to share. And so, ultimately, like I believe what we talked about, especially in this conversation, there's nuggets in here that people can really take away, especially the breathing aspect. I think that's the biggest takeaway, honestly, because we've talked about it a little bit, but really haven't got in depth like we did tonight. But ultimately, I think that is the biggest nugget piece that people can walk away from and really start making the change and becoming more optimal. But
Mhm.
also the sleep aspect too, because like you said, that's the lowest hanging fruit. because that's something that you can control. You can decide to say, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep. So I need to go to bed at this time so I can get up at this time and get 8 hours.
But to do that, you need to make yourself tired by having some purposeful movement.
Back to the exercise piece, purposeful movement. But it's also the night routine too. So turning off the electronics, 15 minutes before you go to bed, meditate. If that's something for you, think about your day tomorrow, start visualizing what you want to occur for tomorrow. Read a book, do something, but get your brain to start slowing down a little bit, the activities to start dropping a little bit. But no, I appreciate taking the time, jumping on here, Flip.
Of course.
Powerful information, great conversation. And these conversations are just conversations that a lot of people are already having. But let's bring it to the forefront. Let's bring it to the open. And we don't hold anything back. So, hey, here we go. And then Garrett's one more comment here from Garrett. He said, great conversation, guys. Appreciate you both. Garrett, we want to thank you for your time and supporting us. And I look at it because of what we're doing, the people that we know, the connection piece is creating a huge collaboration net. And ultimately, that's how it's going to allow us to grow and make the change and just help people out in the long term is the collaboration net that we're creating. And so I'm grateful that our paths have crossed and you come on and you're like, yep, let's go. And ultimately, I think a lot of us we don't say no. We just come and do it. And
we say, let's go. We don't say no.
So is there any last words, anything else that you want to leave before we
I have a quote.
All right.
I actually heard from my jiu-jitsu teacher that they have a podcast as well. It's called the Valente Brothers podcast, and they said a quote yesterday that's a Mark Twain quote, which is actually the book that I read before I go to sleep. Since you're saying, you just wind it down and read, I've been reading Mark Twain, and I added one word to the quote to make it a little bit of our own, and you'll know which word it is as soon as I say it. But here is the quote: a mind that is occupied with optimizing itself doesn't have time to think of negative things.
It's the optimization piece.
There you go.
That would be Flip's favorite thing when it comes to everything is how do we optimize?
How do we optimize?
Instead of let's make it perfect, no, there's nothing perfect. It's how do we optimize it? So no, I love it. That's a great quote to sign off with. But we'll catch everybody next week. I think we'll have Patrick on next week because he's finally on the mend. I know he's back to work. Great. Blow up my phone, blow up my inbox because, what they had to deal with the last 2.5 weeks, man, it was not fun. But I'm excited to have him back in the mix. So
exactly. At least there's back in the mix. Everybody's back in the mix. Everybody should be well again, and let's be grateful for that.
True. All right. We'll catch everybody later.
Peace.
See how long this takes. Gotta love it.